All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At this point, I would like to call the annual meeting of the Blue Earth County Historical Society to order. The first item on the agenda for this afternoon is the approval of the agenda. So if you all refer to the agenda that was handed out to you, take a look. At this point, can I have a motion from the floor to approve? All in favor? Next on the agenda, we have the secretary's report. Gail.
If you please refer to the minutes, which can be found on the back side of the agenda for last year's minutes.
Are there any questions on the 2021 annual minutes? If not, I would take a motion to approve the 2021 minutes. Moved. Can I get a second? Second, all in favor? Thank you. Now, this is where I get to do a little riff on the treasurer's report. I am not the treasurer. Our treasurer, unfortunately, is out this afternoon, but the financial report from our treasurer, Kevin Allen, can be found on page 2 of the annual report. And I will just kind of read through what he gave to us. Wow, what a difference a year can make. Even though COVID refused to go away, the Blue Earth County Historical Society was able to keep going and ended the year with a profitable bottom line. All due to the generosity of our public and private supporters for general operations and special projects. Thank you to those that contributed to the success of the Historical Society in 2021. For 2021, the board budgeted $312,725 in operating income and $312,440 in operating expenses for a net gain of $285. I'm pleased to say that we exceeded our budgeted operating income by $20,163, which is a 6.45% increase, and spent less than budgeted by $41,420, which was a savings of 13.26%. Year over year, our actual income went up by $71,542 for a gain of 27.4%. While our actual expenses only went up by $7,529, which was a 2.9% increase. All in all, it was a very successful year for our society and a wonderful way to begin our 120th anniversary year. Once again, this was largely due to the hard work and dedication of our BECHS staff, as well as support from members and donors. Thank you all. At this point in time, I would take a motion to approve the 2021 financial report. Moved. Second. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. At this point in time, it is my pleasure to introduce the 2021 Blue Earth County Historical Society board members. So if you could all please stand up when your name is called. Joe Buck Gailey. You're first. Our Secretary Gail Elston. Kristen Fisher. Catherine Hughes. Kirby Heward. Mary Tubner. Ken White, way in the back. And those not present today, Kevin Allen, Steve Jameson, Aaron Craig, Kelly McBride, Ken Williams, and Lisa Wolf, and myself. Thank you all so much for all your work this year. We've done some really amazing things over the past year. I'm really pleased to have as colleagues some of these people. They're some of the most amazing, dynamic, forward-thinking while respecting the past individuals I've ever had the pleasure to working with. And this organization is strong because of the work that they put in and the staff puts in. So once again, thank you all. We should review 2021. Everyone should have a copy of the annual report in front of them. Does anybody not? Good. We should I'll take a few moments to point out some of the highlights from the previous year. One of the biggest highlights for me personally, and I will say I'm a little biased, we hosted our annual Speakeasy Gala fundraiser at Chancaster Creek this year. It went over very, very well. It enabled us to kick off our Bold History campaign on a very positive footing. And it was a lot of fun for everybody. In addition, we made, we're in the process of making a new partnership with Chancaster to host the gala again this fall. So we can all look forward to that as well. As mentioned, it did kick off our Bold History campaign. And I am very, very, very proud to say that as of today, we are just $24,771 short of reaching our $240,000 goal, which is incredible. Thank you, everybody who has contributed in any way, shape, or form to this campaign. Yes. If you would have told me or any one of the board staff 2 or 3 years ago that we would be embarking on a fundraising raising campaign of nearly $250,000, we wouldn't have believed it then. But the time, the effort, the work, especially that the staff have put into making this happen has been incredible. We're almost there. Again, I can't thank everybody enough in that regard. A couple other things. We did have beautiful Warren Street reconstructed this year, which kind of threw a hitch in the plans as far as people getting in and out, made it a little more difficult. But because of it now, we are able to start looking forward and figuring out how we can best use this property, this space, make it more accessible for people, make it more comfortable to visit. One of our goals for the year ahead, Jessica will talk more about it later, is a little redo along Warren Street of our own. And one of the other big highlights that I'm really proud of this year as well is we formed a new partnership. Unfortunately, as we all know, we lost Marian Anderson this year, who is a big supporter of not only Historical Society, but an incredibly talented artist and good human being in her own right. Her estate, however, has partnered with the Blue Earth County Historical Society, the Mankato Area Foundation, and the Nicollet County Historical Society to maintain, preserve, care for all of her art collection that she left behind, which is truly incredible. We have,
okay.
We're going to need a bigger room for all this artwork. It's what we're going to need. That is a new partnership for this year, and it offers us the potential going forward to, with her estate's permission, make use of some of her artwork for our own needs. And we can set up exhibits, send them traveling around. It's going to be, it's a really exciting new opportunity for the Historical Society and our other two partners as well. Those are my highlights from this year. I thought it was, again, an incredible year. So thank you all. Thank you all for all the help that you have given us, all your contributions, all your support. We wouldn't be here without what you do. So thank you. At this time, I would like to have Jessica come up and give her executive director's report.
Well, thank you all for being here today. It means a lot to have you in this space and have you with us virtually as well. If you aren't aware, this is being live streamed. So we have friends of ours that are watching it from the warmth and comfort of their own homes. You guys braved the weather. You're hardy Minnesotans. So thank you to everybody that's here today. I have the privilege of recognizing our staff. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have them come up and wave and be smiley because they're all they're running the meetings in the background. So, but to point out, we have Heather Heron, who is currently our communications and archives manager, and she is kind of running tech in the back of this room. And then Shelley Harrison is our curator archivist, and she is monitoring tech out in the main area. And then in 2021, we had another staff person, Danelle Erickson, who at the end of that previous year, she took a new position at a different historical society. So we bid her farewell. There's a nice little thing on the back of the annual report. She gave us her notice in December, but we were able to hang on to her until February. But it still was a big part of 21 for us. The other big milestones we had this year, I always say that we're horrible at tooting our own horns, so watch out, I'm going to toot them right now. But Shelley and myself both celebrate our 20th anniversaries with this organization. So we have seen a lot of change over 2 decades with the growth and the change and the visions and the future of it. It's a very exciting time for both of us to see how this organization continues to move forward. And then Heather's not far behind us. She celebrated her 10-year anniversary with us this past year as well. So I think you have to do a lot to get rid of us because of pandemic and Cherry Street reconstruction and Warren Street reconstruction. We just kind of trudged right through it. So no, we have a really dedicated staff who have a great passion for the work that they do. And we as an organization, we're very fortunate to have them. So if you can, they can kind of hear you through all of the technology, but if you could give applause for our staff, I would appreciate it. So as you can imagine, with Danelle leaving, that means there's changes ahead. And so we are looking at adding additional staff to come, replacement, so to speak. We'll have some shifting around of duties, but we hope within the upcoming year, we'll have 2 new people joining our staff, joining our team. So watch for that information coming out on our social media channels in case you know somebody that might be interested, and then watch the future newsletters to be introduced to them. And of course, once they're on staff, then we'll have to have parties. So you'll have to come back and have some treats and meet the new people. So there's some changes, not just, we weren't just replacing Danelle to replace the position as is, where we took this opportunity to reevaluate our staffing needs since the organization continues to change. And so you'll see some different types of positions coming forward that are all with the goal of continuing to move the organization forward. And speaking of organization forward, obviously, Nick was sharing about the campaign and how that has been going, which is so humbling, exciting. I honestly have no words. It's like my tongue ties up. But one of the things that we are really looking forward to, that first bit of investment in this property, is the parking lot, which doesn't sound super glamorous, but I know all of you that parked in it today are probably very excited the idea that it could be better. There's a lot of challenges. It's falling apart. Our poor snowplow driver in the winter, he has threatened numerous times that he's going to be done plowing it because he plows up more of the parking lot than the snow. So it's time to invest in that infrastructure. Over the past few years, we have put a new roof on this building, a new boiler. We've done asbestos abatement and all the improvements to this level. And so now it's continuing to invest in the property with that parking lot, which will hopefully, the plan will then be to have more parking close to the building. So those of you that it's a challenge to climb a hill, hopefully there'll be a lot more parking next to the door, a lot more handicap parking as well. And we're also looking at a curb cut off of 5th Street. So if you go down 5th and you get frustrated that you have to loop back around, you will hopefully be able to come right into the parking lot at that point. So some big improvements that are to come, which is what the money that we have put out there seeking support for that's all to help us put that into motion. So thank you for that. Again, these are investments in the property that will last for future changes of the property. So we invest in these infrastructure pieces, and then when we do the addition, they'll all still be the pieces that we needed to have in place. So we're taking little bites of a big project. The other thing you'll notice this upcoming year is new programming. Because we are now a staff of 3, we've had to change up how we've been able to do some of our programming, and we've also created some new opportunities. The first Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m., we will have a director's chat, which is just an opportunity to come in and have some time to chat with myself and a board member about what's happening with the organization, to ask questions, to find out some kind of new stuff that's happening. And so that opportunity will continue as long as there's interest. And then the second Saturday of every month, we've pulled back on our Young Historians program for now, because with COVID, there's just been so much unknowns in that area of families coming together. So we've changed it. And the second Saturday of every month will be a free museum Saturday. And the goal is to have some different programming, to have some activities that are more interactive, and give the general community the opportunity to see the museum for free at least once a month. If you're a member, it's free year round. So if you are out there and you would love to help with some programming part of our free Saturdays, we would love to hear about it. You can talk to Heather or myself, and we can use all the extra hands to help with that. And then we have a few things up our sleeves. One of my partners in crime, Mr. Tim Pulis, is sitting over there. If you don't know him, there he is. We tend to go down lots of rabbit holes together on history, and one of them is the Mankato Post Office. And so I am super excited to announce that we will be doing guided tours of the post office in April. And Tim and myself and Susan Hines are working on the kind of the details of what those tours will look like. The opportunity to see the building really in its raw form before any major work is done in that building, in that structure. And so we're really excited. Tim knows where all of the bodies are buried. No, he knows where all the little secrets are. And so we're looking forward to being able to share that with people. It's a space that really was not open to the general public. So we're excited about having that partnership opportunity to share that. And there's a lot more coming up this summer that are still in the works, but a lot more partnerships, a lot more opportunities to engage with the Historical Society in new and different ways. So 2021, even though we're starting out a little bit short-staffed, is really shaping up to be a really fun, engaging, and entertaining year ahead. So we hope that you will stick around with us throughout the year. If you see opportunities that you want to engage with us as a volunteer, please do not hesitate. I think I mentioned that earlier this week to a group. I know it's always nice to be asked to join something, but in this situation with only 3 staff, and basically that means we're a quarter staff down, we need a lot more people to ask us how they can help, because we're not really focused. We're more focused on putting out fires right now. So please reach out if you want to be involved in any way. We would love to have you join us. So I think that kind of recaps what's going to be coming up with the year ahead. I will have the microphone later because I'm going to do our program talking about the 120th history of the Historical Society. So for now, I think I can pass it back over.
Thank you, Jessica. At this point in time, we would take a report from the Governance Committee. Ken.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm hovering around the back because my grandson's in the hospital and I keep waiting for my phone to ring. And I didn't want to interrupt this. I wanted to be able to run quick. So if I kind of drop the mic and run because my phone goes off, you'll know why. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I serve as chair of the Governance Committee. And as part of our function, we recognize the members of the governance committee who are the members of the Board of Trustees who are leaving us, either with expired terms or with other commitments taking them away. And then we also nominate a slate for your approval of new members, and we have 5 new members of the Board of Trustees that we're going to nominate. And I understand I'm supposed to pass the mic off to Gail. Oh, I can go ahead? Okay. Because I'm one of the people on the list who are departing. And Jessica thought it might be a little odd or uncomfortable for me to announce my own departure, but guess what? I get to do it. Yeah, go sit down. Rhonda Dass has decided to leave. She was elected in, nominated and selected in 2021. And simply found her other time commitments got to the point where she was unable to help. Erin Cray completed her first term plus a year, and she too is leaving. She served on the executive committee and the governance committee and was my vice chair for a number of years. And so she and I worked together a lot, and she was great to have around. Me, I served as chair of the governance committee, and oh gosh, on handful of other things as time went on. But the 6 years that I spent here were some of the most rewarding, and I echo what Nick had to say about what wonderful people this organization seems to attract, both as staff. Oh gosh, I don't know that you can say enough about the staff around here, but also the other members of the trustees. They're really remarkable people. And I know that the organization is in excellent hands going forward. And then Lisa Wolf, she completed 1 term. She served on the Member Donor Relations Committee as chair. And it's her fault that we have the $240,000 target. When this was getting kicked around, nobody thought that, I mean, people were talking about, well, how about 120,000? That seems like a big stretch. Lisa took her shoe off and pounded it on the table, for those of you who are old enough to remember that historical reference, and said, no, 240. Well, how about 150? No, 240. And so we settled on 240. And lo and behold, we're $24,000 short of it. So I'd like to have all of you recognize, I don't know that any of the outgoing folks but me are around. Lisa may be, we don't have a screen, so I don't know who's on Zoom. But I think Lisa called in, was going to call in. But I'd like you all, if you would, to recognize the outgoing members of the Board of Trustees. Then we have actually 7 people that we are proposing as a slate for this group to approve to serve on the Board of Trustees. 2 are ongoing members. Kevin Allen is headed into his 3rd term. He serves as the treasurer and unfortunately wasn't able to be with us, but he's the guy who makes sure that all the money works and adds up. And Kirby, you're listed as Heard here, but I know that's not right anymore. Is that right? Okay. And Kirby Heard is headed into her 2nd term. So we have 2 people who are being replaced or who are staying on and continuing to serve for the organization. Then we have 5 candidates that the board has proposed. I sat in on a couple of the interviews and we had one board member who sat in on all 5. So if you have any questions about any of those 5 folks, there's the person to ask. But they're a remarkable group, and I think they will serve the organization extremely well for the 3 years that their term lasts. Mary Ann Brendan, Jennifer Echevarria, Sophia Hoyseth, Eric Olson, and Don Dan Tomhave are the 5 nominees that we have for your approval this year. And so unless anybody has any questions about any of those folks, I'm going to turn the mic over to Nick so that he can do the next piece of getting this processed.
All right, as Ken mentioned, we do have the 5 that we have put forth in nomination. At this time, however, I would like to ask if there are any nominations to join the Board of Trustees from the floor. Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? Seeing no further nominations, I would ask for a motion to approve the 5 individuals that Ken listed earlier to join and serve on the Board of Trustees. Can I get a motion? Moved. Can I get a second? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations to all of you. And I'm looking forward to having you all join and be a part of this. This is really going to be wonderful. Thank you. Before we close it up, I would like to ask if there are any public comments, questions, or concerns at this time. And please don't hesitate. We got all dressed up for nothing otherwise. And I'm sorry for folks in Zoom land that you can't speak directly to us, but all right. Hearing no additional comments, questions, or concerns at this time, I will say that this does conclude the Blue Earth County Historical Society annual business meeting. I do need a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you all for coming. At this time, we're gonna take a short break. We will get the program on the 120th anniversary prepared for you all to enjoy. It's quite good. So if you want, please stick around for that and take a break, wander, use the restroom, do what you need to do. Thank you all.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hopefully I can get this mic to be in the right spot. I think we might want to, do we need to dim the lights? I can take care of it. I might be the wrong one. I did. There we go. Okay, and actually, I think I don't want our friends at home to not hear, so I'll just do this. We'll see how I can make this all magical. Well, thank you for sticking around. For those of you that that stuck around for the goodies, I have another goodie to share with you. So the amount that we announced during the annual meeting, during the business meeting, was the amount that we had as we opened the doors this morning at 10 o'clock. Since that time, there have been donations that have come in. So as of right now, we are in the next basically 24 hours, the goal will be to raise $18,971. So we are getting closer and closer and closer to the goal, which is really darn exciting. So keep an eye on social media. We'll keep having some updates as the weekend goes along. If you are on social media, or you have, even if you've received an email from us, consider forwarding that on to someone else that may be interested. Or, if you're on social media, let people know that you've already made a donation. So you never know what your peers might also be thinking. So Super excited to announce that where our new goal, our new amount is, and it is very appropriate that we are talking about the history of the Blue Earth County Historical Society 120 years. This is the reason why we kicked off this campaign. We kicked it off on our anniversary in November. So my lovely friends in the back there have already seen this. So they were here in the front row cheering me on when we made this big announcement in November. But this was an opportunity for us to reflect back on the history of the organization and to be able to understand where we've been and where we're headed. So excited to be able to present this to you today, as well as we come to the end of this 100. We're still going to be celebrating our anniversary this whole year, but we're coming to the end of this campaign. So to get us started, as any good historian will do, I have to take you back to the minutes and the papers that were filed at this time. On November 7th, 1901, the Constitution for the Blue Earth County Historical Society was signed. That is the document that you see there. 33 people signed this document, and they were ensuring the preservation of local history for generations to come. That is some of the language right there in the document. And according to this is quote, the Historical Society would collect, arrange, and preserve a library of books, pamphlets, maps, manuscripts, prints, papers, and also, I love this quote, rescue from oblivion the memory of its early pioneers and to obtain narratives of their exploits, perils, and adventures, together with their portraits and personal histories, end quote. That is written in our Constitution from 1901. One of the other pieces in that Constitution, or the one I mentioned right away, was to collect, arrange, and preserve. And that is our purpose from our founding until still continues today. So let's see. This guy, I want to introduce you to him. As a historian, I tend to get lost in the people that were part of the organization, to know their stories, to know their involvement in the community, but also as their involvement in the organization. Daniel Buck, he was one of the driving forces behind the organization in 1901. He served as the society's first president. And I love this. His daughter, Laura Buck Abbott, was among the 5 women who signed this Constitution in 1901. He was born in 1929 in New York, and he came to Blue Earth County in 1857. He was instrumental in securing the legislation that allowed for the state normal school to be located in Mankato. The school then opened in 1868, which we know today as Minnesota State University, Mankato. If you attended any version of Mankato State down on Lower Campus, there was a dormitory that was named after him. It was Buck Hall. But he goes down in the record books. His name is the very first name on that Constitution. This is one of my all-time favorite photographs of the Historical Society. So the main reason the organization was founded at this time was because Mankato was coming on its 50th anniversary of being a town. And so it was called a semi-centennial. And so they were pulling people together to recognize the county's 50-year history and the city's 50-year history. They realized at this point that a lot of those early residents that had come here to found the community and the county both were, we were losing that generation of those early people. And so this was that opportunity, kind of why they had in the Constitution about the purpose of the organization. It was really to make sure that there was a record keeping of, before another generation was lost, how are we going to be able to remember this? So for 5 days in July of 1902, the Mankato Semi-Centennial was held. This was the very first time the Historical Society had a museum. And it was in the Ben Pay Livery Barn. So a livery barn, if you're not familiar, was basically a taxi cab station for horses and carriages. So if you came to town, but you came to town by train, but you had no way to get around town, you could rent a horse or rent a horse and buggy, and you could get around town. And so Ben Pay was one of the community people, and he had a livery barn. And you could tell by the rafters and everything that are in this one, he was actually he was shutting down that business. So this building was sitting empty. And so they cleaned it all up and they had their very first museum. The thing about it is they really called it a museum of relics and curiosities. So if you will notice some of the things that are on display in our newest exhibit, you will find some relics and curiosities that have really no connection to Blue Earth County, but they definitely tell the history of the society. So at this time, I think we've got a little, yes, we do. Okay, so right here, you can't see it super great in the photograph, but there are 2 chairs sitting right here in July of 1902. Those 2 chairs are still in our collection today. One of my favorite things to be able to spot was when I discovered those chairs. But this man right here is Thomas Hughes. He goes down in the record books as literally being the man that created the record books. He is the man who wrote many of the histories of Mankato's history and Blue Earth County's history in those early turn of the century. But you're getting just a little glimpse of what life looked like at the Mankato semi-centennial in 1902. Recently, I discovered, so the event was a 5-day event, parade, picnic at Sibley Park, a banquet, grand finale with fireworks on the 4th of July. But the one thing that I just recently discovered is that the Carnegie Libraries was dedicated during the 5-day week of the Mankato Semi-Centennial. So they had just started, they placed the cornerstone and did the dedication during this week as well. So following the Semi-Centennial celebration, the organization saw little activity. There was a big push right off the bat because now there was all this fun event to work for. They continue to still record history, but there wasn't a lot of meetings that were held at this time. But in 1916, history and preservation was really on the minds of many, not just locally, but across the state and across the country. So this was a time period where publications about the history of was being written very prolifically at this time. Minnesota Historical Society and state historians put out calls to all of the counties in Minnesota to actively collect and preserve their history and maintain the historic records in a central location. Again, very especially important because most of these organizations, they were kind of kickstarted because of World War I. And so there was another moment in time that was triggering like, hey, we need to do something. We're losing another generation. So during this time, the articles of incorporation for the organization were filed on Memorial Day, May 30th, 1916. There were 13 individuals that signed this document right here. And they became the charter members of the new organization, the renewed organization. The purpose of the society within those articles is, quote, the collection, preservation, and publication of materials relating to the history of Blue Earth County. These 13 individuals also served as the first board of trustees, and the annual membership dues were set at $1. They're a little more today, but it's inflation. So the first meeting was on Memorial Day, and they had all come together to celebrate Memorial Day, but they also were coming together to figure out where are they going to keep the archives, the relics that had been collected. So at this point in time, the normal school had offered space for us to have storage on that location. That became the very first collection storage location for us, was part of the normal school, which today we know as Minnesota State University Mankato. At that same meeting, I need to introduce you to someone, Judge Lauren Cray. You will notice out in the new exhibit, we have his frock coat that is very similar to the one that's photographed here. So kind of a neat object to have in remembrance of him. At that meeting, I absolutely love this. This is a direct quote from him, from President Cray. Quote, he hoped the day was not far distant when the association would command a membership that would enable them to have a home of their own, where the many treasures that he felt sure would soon be assembled might form an educational center for all southern Minnesota, and that the names and deeds of the men and women who turned the tangled wilderness of this beautiful valley into smiling fields and who laid the foundation of our schools and churches that are now our pride may not pass into oblivion. Judge Lauren Cray was born in 1844 in New York and came to Blue Earth County in 1859, where he settled in Pleasant Mound Township. Cray served in the Civil War, and he was wounded in his shoulder that was forever changed, which sent him back home during the Civil War. He opened a law office in Lake Crystal and continued it there until 1887 when he moved to Mankato. During his time in Mankato, Cray was the attorney for 2 different railroads and the National Citizens Bank. From 1900 to 1908, he served as judge for the 6th Judicial Courts. He was elected in 1908 to be the president of National Citizens Bank, and his dedication to history would prove vital to the Blue Earth County Historical Society in the future. And I'll have more on that in a moment. Like the efforts in 1901, there were also a few community events in Mankato in 1916 that spurred that renewed interest in the Historical Society. One of them was in February, the Mankato Bazaar, which you're not seeing a picture here, but the Mankato Bazaar was put together to raise money for the Red Cross and the war effort, again, World War I. Different booths displayed historic relics, and a historical reenactment was also part of that event. Later that summer in July, the Mankato Historical Pageant was held to reenact the history and development of Mankato. Many of the members of the Historical Society served on committees, wrote scripts, or played different roles in the pageant. Over 500 people participated in the pageant that was viewed by over 15,000 people in Sibley Park. So those are some pictures from the historical pageant, and out on the new exhibit, you will also see one of the costumes that was worn during this pageant. But can you just imagine 15,000 people gathering at Sibley Park? Okay, that's enough to just boggle your mind. During the 1920s, the Historical Society was active. They planned trips to different historical places. They were reading papers on historical topics, collecting artifacts, placing plaques around the community, and working on preservation of buildings. And one such property was in rural Blue Earth County, the Setman Mill. Became the focus of the Historical Society's interest in 1927. BECHS formed a committee to pursue the preservation of the mill that was built in 1864. Repair was performed over a 4-year period, and the mill was later turned over to the state to become part of Minneopa State Park. Setman Mill has seen additional restoration by the DNR, thereby keeping this example of early milling standing for visitors to enjoy. BECHS continues to work on local properties through the 1930s, including the George Ott Cabin that was built in 1858, was being torn down, and instead the Historical Society made arrangements to have the cabin moved to Sibley Park, where it remains today, showing the results of one hardworking pioneer. While much was accomplished by the Historical Society during this early time, the Society struggled with many problems facing many county historical societies, which included the lack of space and money. The space issue was hampered when part of the collection was lost to the fire that was at the Mankato Normal School. There's that building. The Society had plans for a fireproof building, but the hopes never turned into reality. A temporary home was found in a combination of places, including the public library or the Carnegie Library in the 1920s, offered space in the basement for exhibits and and then larger items were stored at the pavilion in Sibley Park in the 1930s. These locations allowed many people to view the exhibits throughout the community. The collections continued to grow as more donations were made, and the library wanted its space back, so plans for a permanent home kept the Society's board very busy. When former Historical Society President Lauren Cray passed away in 1927, his estate gifted $10,000 to BECHS to either find or build a permanent home. Cray's obituary says it was his, quote, firm desire to see the erection of a memorial building here to house historical relics. He took occasion in 2 or 3 public speeches to speak for such a project and offered an initial sum for the starting of it, end quote. It would be over a decade before the society would put this to use. Among the options was to build a museum at Sibley Park. Aren't we glad they didn't? We know the flooding that's going to come soon. In 1937, architectural plans were drawn and a request for about $30,000 in federal money through the WPA was made. However, no federal funding was received. So that is a sketch drawing of what that WPA building would have looked like at Sibley Park. Again, we know what's going to happen with flooding, so it's a good thing we didn't get a building down there. The ongoing search for a home ended in 1938 when the society made arrangements to buy the home built in 1871 by Mankato businessman Rensselaer D. Hubbard. R.D. had passed away many years before, and his daughter, Mary Esther Richter, was willing to sell the home to the society. The purchase was almost completely funded by Cray's bequest. Coincidentally, the house is a direct neighbor to the long-term home of Judge Lauren Cray. The society needed a permanent home, was not sure they could afford to maintain the house. After some public debate, the city of Mankato agreed to take ownership of the building and maintain it for as long as BECHS used it as a museum. While some considered this somewhat controversial, it resulted in the decision by the city council to preserve one of Mankato's architectural landmarks. This arrangement still remains, and the city still owns the property, and the Historical Society manages the museum out of this property. The Hubbard House was the Society's first permanent home and allowed us to be able to collect, preserve, and display more donations of artifacts and archives than ever before. Also at this time, the Society took a significant step by hiring the first staff person. Retired librarian Margaret Gables was given the task of organizing and classifying the collections. Jumping ahead a little bit, during the 1970s and 80s, which is the picture in the middle, the Society worked with the Minnesota Historical Society to identify significant county sites for a statewide survey of historic places. A number of Blue Earth County sites were added to the National Register, including the Hubbard House in 1975. The next year, a feasibility study was prepared for the complete restoration of the Hubbard House. Years of adding artifacts and archives to its holdings filled the Hubbard House to its rafters. The Society's Board of Trustees once again was looking at ways to meet the growing needs of the Society. The search for a larger facility took many years. Plans for a variety of options were considered, but lack of funding hindered those efforts. So there is the Hubbard family home in 1899. This is what it looked like as the museum, that same room. This is the front parlor in 1950s. And this is what it looks like today as a restored historic house museum. Same room. Here's some examples of some of the ways the Historical Society has been actively assisting with the preservation of Blue Earth County, including historic plaques and National Register listings, and serving on the Mankato Heritage Preservation Commission. So in 1986, the board learned that the Mankato Area Senior Citizens, Inc. was looking for a partner to share the building formerly operated as the Newman Center, this building. Both organizations raised $175,000, and the Catholic Diocese, which still held the mortgage of the building, agreed to forgive an additional $109,000 of the mortgage. This unique partnership joined two nonprofit organizations together in the ownership and management of a shared building. BECHS raised an additional money for the renovation of their portion of the building into a professionally designed museum, exhibit gallery, research center, offices, artifact storage room, and museum store. The brand new Heritage Center, you can see that it's in the text, but that's the name of the building was going to be, open to the public in 3 phases between June 1989 and August of 1990. With the Hubbard House now free of the collections, the restoration plan that was developed back in the 1970s could begin, and much of the interior restoration of the house was completed during the 1990s, where the house was put back the way it was, and furniture appropriate to the time period was either donated or purchased with donated funds. And so now back to that last picture, now the house is representing those early years the Hubbard family lived there up until 1938. So this is what the History Center looked like. This is what the museum looked like when we moved in 1988. And that's that same space with exhibits in it. And there was that's the Cherry Street entrance. That now is kind of considered our back door. So 20 years in the building, space was starting to get tight again. And it was in 2014 that the Mankato Area Senior Citizens, Inc., now under the operation of Vine, sold their interest in the building to the Historical Society, allowing us to expand into the additional 6,000 square feet that then took over the whole building, so 16,000 square feet. At this time, the building was renamed the History Center. And we also moved our front door and changed our address, which is still a challenge. So we have been investing in the History Center for a number of years now. Over the past year, we've had some big building projects, including the conversion to all LED lighting throughout the building, a new roof, new boiler that conveniently came in our BECHS blue color. I just had to make sure you guys were listening. Asbestos abatement, which also led to other improvements during the pandemic. That was a blessing in disguise. Over the years, the Historical Society has provided thousands of people with help in tracing their family roots and researching historical topics. The Society's collections of items donated are professionally cared for in a climate-controlled environment. Both the History Center and Hubbard House have been toured by thousands of school children and visitors, as we have shared the history of Blue Earth County through exhibits, programs, even blogs and podcasts. Kinds of crazy stuff that we took a chance on during the pandemic. Like most organizations starting out, our beginnings were humble, but through the work of wonderful volunteers, generous donors, and committed staff and board members, we've built an organization that we should all be very proud of. I have always loved these 3 words from that original and still current mission statement, quote, "for future generations." Just like those early founders knew back in 1901, history doesn't stop, and neither should we. If you're curious where that lovely Model A is located, it is in our garage. And it's not on display because we can't physically get it into the building. The stagecoach is at the carriage house, if you haven't seen that in a while. So now we're talking about that big, bold vision. As we looked back on our anniversary back in November, we were looking ahead to what should this organization look forward to in the next 120 years. And that vision that I said to somebody, it's like been a little dream in my pocket since 2014. And it's been very exciting this past few months to be able to share this vision. Our vision is that 3 years from now, we will be ready to break ground on, it might just be the shovel going in the ground on December 31st, but break ground on a bold new expansion of the History Center, of the museum, expanding on our northeast corner of this property. So what everybody has been supporting us with this campaign was the bold first step, which was the $240,000 in 120 days for our 120th anniversary. The bulk of that support will help with the reinvestment in the parking lot and the property itself, doing some exterior improvements to the property, and then give us also the staffing and the resources needed to be working on the concepts and the all of the documents and all of the things that have to happen for us to be able to do that bold expansion. Bold expansion will be a much bigger price tag, but we will be celebrating all the way around. But for now, we're really excited to take this really big, bold step to deal with the outside of our building. So if you're confused on where you're at, you can see the little blue circle right there. That's the main entrance that most of you came through today when you came for the meeting. And the new main entrance potentially would be off of 5th Street. And all of this space is currently 2 vacant lots that can then be developed into more space that looks similar to this. These are all concepts that date back to 2014. So I truly say, especially with the parking lot, these are concepts, because anyone who is parked out there today knows it is not a flat parking lot. So we have got some reality concepts have to happen very soon. But with the expansion would add on about 10,000 square feet of space, both on the main level and on the 2nd story, with an overhead door that allows those vehicles to finally make their way inside the museum. A very exciting concept that will be developed over the next couple of years. So we are really excited about where this is going to take us. We're excited that you are all here along the way. I'm just going to go back to let you guys dream a little bit more. Imagine a history center with interactive exhibits and expanded galleries that we can display that Model A, that stagecoach. Imagine an updated and modern accessible history center where all ages can be inspired, engaged, and connect to our rich history. Imagine new ways to learn and share Blue Earth County's story for future generations. It's a really exciting time. We really appreciate everyone that has made it possible for the Blue Earth County Historical Society to be a vibrant and active organization the past 120 years. We are overjoyed to be carrying that mission forward and to only imagine what the next 120 years will mean for this organization and for Blue Earth County. So I'll leave it there, because you all can dream. You can all see the little dream that's been in my pocket. And thank you all for your support and for being part of this bold vision and being history heroes for the Blue Earth County Historical Society. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is the chance. Now you can grill me with questions. I'm expecting Tim Pulis to come up with something to ask me. He doesn't have anything? Oh, okay. So any questions? So would you be able to?
I can run around. I've got a microphone so that those on the Zoom chat can get the questions as well. We do have one on Zoom right now. Can you name the current champions who are making a difference in moving us forward? They noticed that the Crays and the Hubbards were really early on. So who's doing it now?
Wonderful. That's a really interesting question. I love that question. I think that's something that the modern history is always a challenge for any historian to be thinking about. But I definitely can look at our list of donors. You can see that in the newsletter or in the annual report, those lists of donors that have contributed have been the financial support of the organization. But I must say it's been those that have served on the board of trustees, those that have over the last, even going back to when we moved into this building in '88, they had the vision of what this could become for the organization. That's a really interesting question, and it's something that I want to make sure that we are documenting. So thank you, our Zoom friend, for asking that question. And then I think we had a question in the audience as well.
I was wondering what will happen to the housing adjacent to us where the new expansion will happen?
Yep. So those of you that are in the room can look out the window and see a house that has lived a very long time next to this building. The house, I have been told by many who attended Mankato State College or Mankato State University, that they also spent time in that house during their college years, and it continues to be a rental property. So that piece of property is the only property in a half of a city block that is not already owned by the property owner, the Historical Society and the Summit Heritage Foundation. The goal will be to acquire that property. And I unfortunately have to say that the goal will also be to have that house torn down, but we're hoping to have as much architectural salvage come out of that building as much as possible so that it can have, those pieces can have new life and new projects. But I have been told that it's not in the greatest condition inside. It's been a rental property probably solidly since the 50s. So there's some challenges. I think there is probably alcohol soaked from top to bottom. So unfortunately, it hasn't been a house that's been well cared for. But I do hope that we're able to do a lot of salvage. And I know different properties like the Moulin Rouge Bed and Breakfast. There's a lot of historic properties that are always looking for pieces to be able to put back into their properties when things had over time, when old was considered old and needed to leave. So there's a lot of pieces that are missing from different homes, and hopefully this can answer the question for other preservation projects. We have a question right up front. I'll just come right over.
Sculpture in this picture. What is that symbolizing, and what are you hoping that do we have it?
No. So that is the architect's idea of a sculpture. Again, concepts. No, that's all architect. That when they did the concepts back in 2014, saying that, hey, you've got a spot here, you could do a sculpture. So we have a lot of work to do to actually refine this to what is reality for us.
Well, because you have a new art director at Bethany College.
Yeah.
Just finalizing the memorial that's going on this summer.
Wonderful.
500,000, and
Wow.
the students are taking the two people that are going to be in that sculpture up to Hungary, north of St. Paul. Wow. And it's going to be cast in bronze now.
Wow.
It's 500,000. So it's going to be dedicated sometime this summer.
Wow.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If the right people go and talk to him. They can help.
Yeah. Exactly. So just for those that were at home that didn't hear that, Bethany Lutheran College will be doing a war memorial coming up this summer, hopefully dedication this summer. And so the question was about what kind of sculpture we may have on the outside of our building. I think it's very appropriate that we have different, we have something that's pulling people into the building. What that will look like, we don't know, but I guess everybody can put that little dream in their pockets and see what we can come up with to be able to enhance the exterior of the building when the time comes. Yes. So Hal Nadvik is the gentleman up front. He has recently donated his life's passion of collecting postcards, which is a form of photographs, the way they were printed during a certain time period. And he has recently donated that collection to the Historical Society. So we're in the process of working with Hal about that donation and about having those then made available to the public to be able to view that collection. So if you noticed in the annual report, the collections of this organization have not slowed down. In fact, last year we had a large amount of objects being donated to the collection, which is probably the question of why do we need all of this space? We need it because we continue to collect and preserve the history of Blue Earth County. That's our job. So we are in the business of storage, which is maybe not so glamorous, but it is what our job is. And it has been for 120 years. And with an expanded exhibit space, then we can have even more stories on display. Sorry, wrong way. So all of that space that's kind of carved out with the blue square, that's all new exhibit space. So we can tell that many more stories and have that many more objects on display. Concepts, not finals. So if you don't like where the bathrooms are located, don't say anything yet because it's just a concept. Any other questions or comments in the room? Anybody else online? Nope. Okay. Well, with that, I think we officially can conclude 2021 and we can be rolling happily through to 2022. So thank you everybody for being with us today. Feel free to grab another cookie on your way out. Otherwise, the staff will just have to eat them all weekend long. Thank you very much for your support and for being part of our annual meeting today. Thank you.